Okay, some parts have come and I've got on with some more of the defects on this Royal Enfield Model G, and I've now got studs of the correct sizes and threads and nuts to go with them to clamp the front wheel on safely. But while I've been working on the forks and I filled them with oil and freed them off, I've now noticed that one leg appears to be, if you like, longer than the other one, and that's where they sort of naturally seem to want to be. So I'm going to investigate this. Perhaps one spring is slightly longer than the other, or perhaps one stanchion isn't fully home in a top yoke, and I certainly don't want that to be the case, so I'm going to investigate there. And I've also got to dismantle this fork anyway, because since putting oil in it I found there's an oil leak here, and this aluminium end screws onto the steel fork leg, so I'm going to have to try and get that off and have a look at it and probably put some sealant, perhaps some well seal or something on the threads, and put it all back together. But I also want to find out why, when they're relaxed, that these forks are out of step with each other by at least an inch, if not a little bit more. So more to look at. I was hoping to move on. I've got the proper brake torque arm now. Look at the difference between this flimsy little homemade one that had the forked end that caused all the trouble, and the proper item, which is about twice as thick and has the correct round holes for the bolts. So a good bit stronger, a good bit safer, and it didn't break the bank. I think it only cost about 14 quid. Could have saved someone's life, that. And there we go. Anyway, on with these forks next, and hopefully I'll be able to give a little update soon and discuss what I found. Well, I've got the forks stripped down on this Royal Enfield Model G now. I've stripped them before because they were dirty and assembled dry, and I cleaned them up and put oil in them and got them moving because they'd actually been jammed. And once I found that they were moving freely with the wheel off, I noticed that one fork leg appeared to be further down or longer than the other one, and I thought I'd better just have a look at that, just in case perhaps the stanchion wasn't fully home in the steering, in the top yoke. The stanchions are fine, they're equal and level, as we can see there, so they're no great worry. Sorry about the light shining in from outside, blurring the picture a little. Anyway, I've made a discovery. I've taken the internals of the forks out from end to end. I've got the legs off because I've got an oil leak on one of the legs where the alloy end screws onto the metal tube. I'm going to deal with that, but also I thought I'd take a look and see why one fork seemed to be longer than the other, and I've got the answer. I'll just show you from end to end first of all what we've got here. And what we have actually got here is two completely different sets of internals between one leg and the other. Now if we start off, say we put these two flush there, they're flush with each other, the ends of them, we can see that one, if you want to call it a damper rod, is about, it's at least half an inch, if not 3/4 of an inch shorter than the other one. Moving up there, so that's assuming that we held both fork legs level with each other as they would be when the wheel's in place. We work along this, we can see there we've got about half to 3/4 of an inch difference there. Move along, move along, move along, and by the time we get up to this end we've got about 1.5 inches difference in overall length, because as well as this damper rod being shorter, the spring is also shorter, so this whole assembly closest to us overall is about 1.5 inches shorter than the one just further away there. That's why the fork action was uneven once they were freed off, because when they were jammed solid it didn't really matter. because they weren't moving and you couldn't tell. So now, since I've solved the problem and got some oil in them, got them moving, not only do we find that the oil is leaking out of one of them, but also that the forks internals are different lengths to each other. So I'm going to have to try and find out which is the correct one, if either of them are, and or find a match for either one of those, so that one way or another I end up with a matched pair of fork internals. That would be a huge help to the handling, I would think. Here's the Royal Enfield Model G, minus front wheel and the lower components of the front forks and the internals. And let's just have a look at them again. I've got them laid out now next to each other on a flat surface. And if we start from the end that would be nearest the wheel, and I've got them both set flush with each other and work along. These aren't called damper rods actually, they're called spring studs. That's what they're referred to in the parts book. We can see that straight away one spring stud is shorter than the other one by over ½ inch, I would say there. Moving along, we've got the springs themselves, which again are different, and one is a good bit longer, at least an inch longer than the other one. And if I just pull the bottoms of the springs together so that they're in line with each other, which is about there, I would say, we can see the difference in the length of the springs themselves by the time we get up to this end. And yeah, we got about at least 3/4 of an inch there. But the overall difference in the two assemblies, as I've already said earlier, is probably actually 1.25 inches, or maybe even a little more than that. And interestingly, the springs, the spacings between the coils in the two springs differ as well, so there's all sorts of differences going on there. And what I've done is I've ordered the correct parts for this model. I've ordered one spring stud and one spring, in the hope that between everything that I end up with, I'll be able to make a matching pair or set of fork springs and studs that will be of equal overall lengths, and finally put the forks back together, and hopefully they'll be oil tight, because I've attended to the end of this fork, unscrewed that, cleaned everything up, put some well seal, a good bit of well seal on the threads, and screwed it back together tightly, so I'm hoping that that leg won't leak oil anymore. And with any luck, once the replacement parts come regarding the spring and the spring stud, I might finally be able to put the forks together, put the front wheel on, and actually get this thing rideable, because in the meantime I've now fitted the brake torque arm, the correct one, and the brake's all set up and ready to work. So I'm hoping that once I get the front forks and the front wheel on, I'll finally get this thing down off the bike lift, and with a little bit of luck we might actually finally get to go and have a ride on it, which would be nice after all this work.